Welcome to The Author Show, where we feature new authors and books, from fiction to self-help and everything in between. You'll find it all at theauthorshow.com. That's theauthorshow.com. And now let the show begin.
Hi, this is The Author Show, and I'm your host, Linda Thompson. Before I introduce our guest, just a quick reminder that selected interviews are available in our iPhone app, which can be downloaded in the App Store, as well as on TV, on the Roku channel and Amazon Fire TV. Our app name on all platforms is The Author Show. The book Path of Affliction is a fast-paced fictional crime thriller by first-time author Nick Campanella. This magnetizing book will put you in the boots of a hard-working average guy who, with the help of his friends, will do anything to survive. Well, with an intro like that, I think we're in for a thrilling ride. Nick joins us to share more. Nick, welcome to The Author Show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. I appreciate this opportunity.
Nick, will you please give us a quick overview of Path of Affliction?
I'm one of those people that when I dream, I don't remember any of my dreams, but for some reason, I just remembered this dream and it was so vivid. I had to put it on paper. And this dream involved a character named Frankie Buchetti, who basically it's about the consequences of stealing a bag of money from a drug cartel, and puts you in the boots of this hardworking average guy. He just, that he went out hunting with his friends and they hear gunshots and screams. And instead of calling 911 or instead of fleeing the scene, they decided to go try to help these people. And when they go help these people, they're dead with bullet holes everywhere, blood everywhere. And they find a duffel bag full of money. They found drugs too, but they leave the drugs, take the money, and they plan on stashing it for a rainy day. But from there, bad things happen. The cops are after him, the feds are after him, the cartel's after him, and things just don't really go as planned for these four characters.
That must have been quite a dream. Well,
it was terrifying.
Where did you say you got this idea from? A dream? So did you see Frankie Buchetti? I mean, he is your protagonist. And did you dream about the whole thing, or did you dream about him or the particular encounter with all of the dead guys, and then you just took it on from there in your writing?
Yeah, all of the above. Now that I'm a writer, I learned all these things that, you're not supposed to write a book about a dream. You're not supposed to write a book about yourself. So, Frankie Buchetti obviously isn't me, but in the dream, the actual real dream, it was me and some of my friends. And I just kind of decided to go with it. And as you know, when you have a dream, you try to write this book, and eventually you find an editor that says, yeah, that's great. Fiction is stranger than the truth. When you write a book, the dream ended up getting twisted a little bit with the editors. They would say this doesn't work. It doesn't drive the story forward, because I knew nothing about the elements of a story going into this. I was not a writer. I was a C student in English. It was just a hobby, for 4 or 5 years. And then the editor told me I had the skeleton, the bones of a great story. And this woman helped me, and she coached me to learn the elements of the story and put it together and mold it so that you have a complete story from this dream that I had.
What a great story about your editor helping you that much. So I want to know where you came up with the title, Path of Affliction.
The original name was Blood on the Snow, Path of Affliction. Path of Affliction was the subtitle, and we actually made the change late, right before we published. The publisher was like, you know what? That's too many words for the cover. It's just clogging up the whole cover. They say you hate to kill your babies, but it was tough. But I realized that the words Path of Affliction is the theme of the story. It's
Absolutely.
about this character that takes this path of pain and suffering, mentally, physically, and yeah, it just stuck. I think it's great. I love the title, and it's shorter and it gets right to the point. And if you see on the cover, it's got the guy running through the woods, and they say you're not supposed to have your book cover be a picture, but that's what it is. There's a trail up here in Duluth, Minnesota. I had a friend take that picture. That was me with the duffel bag, and we threw some ketchup down for the blood, and it was cheap, it was fun, and it ended up working. I wouldn't change it for the world.
Well, Nick, since this is your first novel, was there any other author or book that you think inspired you to consider a career as an author?
There's a book called The Family Corleone. It is the prequel to The Godfather. I think his name is Ed Falco. It's one of the first fiction books I read, and it just really touched me. And Godfather is one of my favorite movies, but it's the prequel that it's the rise of the Don Corleone, and it was just so touching, and I loved it so much. I read it twice, and it just kind of gave me a little bit of hope that I could put together a story like that.
would you say would be the ideal reader for Path of Affliction?
Gets to people that don't read that often, people that may not have ever read a fiction book. It gets them to understand that reading is fun and it's healthy, it's good for your brain. And if you find a good book, I mean, it makes you feel like you're floating. And a lot of people don't know that. They miss out on that because they read a book that's boring to them and then they never pick up another book. So I'm hoping to help some young people and get them reading, because I think in this era, there's so much YouTube and so much everything on Facebook and everything. If you want to know everything about Abraham Lincoln, you just type in, tell me about Abraham Lincoln on Google, and they think that they know everything about Abraham Lincoln. If we can help people to just read, I think the world would be a better place.
I have to agree. Just chill out and sit down with a good book and put all the electronics away. I think you're onto something there. So what sets Path of Affliction apart from others in the thriller genre?
Well, honestly, back to that editor, she taught me when I first started writing this book, I thought that you had to have a narrator. You hear about the book that takes 40 pages for the person to cross the road and everything like that. But the editor taught me that less is more with the narrator. You want to have more dialogue. I like to read too, not as much as you. I don't read 5 books a week, but I buy these books. I'll read through it even if I'm a little bit bored, but their narrator goes for like multiple pages. You're skimming, trying to get to the dialogue. And this book has a lot of dialogue. The narrator only speaks when it's important, crucial to driving the story forward.
Nick, your protagonist, Frankie, is a humanitarian at heart, but seems to get off track on his hunting trip. Does he ever get back his old life, or does he even want to after that?
After he settles down, after they have the money and they think that they're safe and everything, they're a little bit worried about the cops. But yeah, he goes back to work and he's digging ditches, and he does have that moment where he's like, I don't need to do this anymore. I got $1 million buried in the ground. And right when he has that moment, then everything else starts to happen. And he starts to realize that he doesn't really have time to think, because he's got the cops after him and the cartel after him, and life starts to get pretty fast for him.
Will Frankie or any of your other characters return to us in a sequel or maybe even a series?
Definitely. I have written the next book, the sequel called Order from Chaos. Yeah, Frankie's definitely going to be in there, and some of the other characters are also. And then the third book will most likely probably have the same characters, especially Frankie Buchetti.
Will you give us a short teaser on your second book?
Honestly, if you've ever read the book 1984, or seen the movie 1984. It's a dystopian thriller, kind of like that. It picks up right where this Path of Affliction leaves off. And basically World War III happens and Frankie Buchetti is living in this world. And it's a weird coincidence that, we've lived through this pandemic. About a year ago when the pandemic first happened, when you go to Walmart or whatnot, everyone's eyes are big and everyone looked a little bit scared. Everyone was a little bit just unknowing of what was going to happen next, and in this book, the people are kind of like that. But Frankie Buchetti has a plan. He's got some money behind him and he's plotting and planning to save the world, and we'll see what happens.
Let's dream a little bit, Nick. Let's think that your book, Path of Affliction, has been picked up for either a small screen series or a big screen movie. Who would you want to play the character of Frankie?
Oh, wow, that's a good question. If I was an actor, I'd love to do it myself. He's a 30-something person, mixed nationality, dark skin. I mean, if there was a younger Denzel Washington, that'd be great. I haven't thought about that. But yeah, we'd have to find somebody that's, kind of quiet, kind of shy, a little bit of pent-up aggression. I would love to see this movie on film or even in some sort of Netflix series or something like that, because it is just an amazing story.
Nick, did you always picture yourself as a storyteller, and did you always dream of being an author at some point?
I never did. I never even dreamed of it. Never even thought of it. I was a C student in English. I was a hockey player and a ditch digger myself. I was a shy, quiet person. I didn't really speak, but I did have a lot to say that just never really came out. My voice was a little softer than all my friends, so it'd get spoken over. But I noticed in college, the professor for history, he'd tell us to write a book report for 3 or 4 or 5 pages. And I'd always write like 10 pages and he'd say, okay, you got an A, buddy, but I don't want to read all that, just make it 3 or 4 pages, So I realized that I had a knack for elaborating and writing a little bit further. And this book, before the editor got a hold of it, was 400 pages and she cut it down to 31 pages.
Wow.
230 pages. I called her the butcher. That was her nickname.
Will you please read for us a short excerpt from Path of Affliction?
Yeah, I'd love to.